it that we as humans learn how to speak? And why is it that all children seem to make the same mistakes when they say things like, "I petted the dog"? Language development is a lot like other areas of development, where there are specific milestones and stages that are achieved that help us in learning how to speak and how to think in our language. So let's start today by talking about the structures of language. Because as we learn how to speak, we first have to learn how to produce different sounds. And the types of sounds that we learn how to produce when we're learning a language are known as phonemes and morphemes. Phonemes are the smallest distinct units of sound in a language. They're used to create the words that we'll eventually say. These sounds don't carry any particular meaning. They're just the sounds that we use in the eventual formation of the actual words. Once we turn them into something that has meaning, however, they morph into morphemes. Morphemes are the smallest unit that carry meaning in a language. That means it can be a word or a part of a word. Like the word walking, for example, has two morphemes. The walk obviously carries meaning, and ing carries meaning. And we can use that to indicate different actions like walking or running or jogging. Once we learn how to make sounds in a language and then make sounds that have meaning in a language, which is essentially learning how to speak, we then have to learn the rules that we follow within that language as well. And that's where grammar comes in. Grammar is what allows us to understand the order of words and the meaning of words so that when we follow those rules, we can communicate effectively with another person. When we talk about the meaning of words, what we're referring to is semantics. It's what helps us to understand the difference between different words so that we can convey our thoughts and ideas as clearly as possible. So you can understand when someone says someone was walking down the hall versus running down the hall, that the sense of urgency of those two people might be different. And the syntax of a language is then the word order. There are different ways that we put words in order depending on the language that we speak that help us to communicate effectively. Now, that's not to say that if you were to put the words in the wrong order, someone couldn't still understand the general meaning of what you're trying to say. But as we learn to master the syntax of a language, it just makes that communication more quick and easier for someone else who speaks that same language to be able to follow. Now, when we're talking about this from a developmental standpoint, children are going to go through different developmental stages as they learn how to speak. The first stage is what's referred to as cooing. Cooing is that pre-linguistic stage where they're just making sounds. Babies are making sounds at this point in time and are often being given reinforcement in the way of smiles and praise from their parents that encourages them to continue making these sounds. Eventually, these sounds turn into what's known as babbling, which is where we see the repetition of consonant-vowel combinations. And often these combinations are those phonemes. They're actually starting to create the sounds that are going to be used in the formation of their language. Once they are able to turn those sounds into morphemes, into things that have meaning, we've entered into what's known as the one-word stage. And that is where a child can say a single word at a time. Think about their first words like mama or dada. This typically happens somewhere around the ages of 12 to 18 months, although it can vary from child to child. Once children learn how to put words together, they enter into what we refer to as telegraphic speech, which means that they can use short, distinct phrases to communicate basic concepts or ideas. Think about how a child might say something like want cookie instead of the full sentence of I want a cookie, where we can understand what they're trying to communicate, even if they don't have all parts of the sentence present. What we do notice, however, is during that stage, when they are using telegraphic speech, they typically do follow the syntax rules of putting those words in the correct order. And as children start to learn the different rules in their language, we start to see this phenomenon known as overgeneralization, where once they learn about a concept such as past tense, such as using ed to reflect something that has already taken place, they might start to overgeneralize and use it in cases where they don't need to. So when they say something like, I petted the dog, or we go to the zoo, they're trying to use the rules that exist within their language, even if they don't always get it 100% correct. Eventually, these tendencies will start to go away as children continue to master language. And then we can continue to express ourselves and the thoughts that we're having using the language that we speak. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember, be kind to your mind.